Hello there! Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I will be discussing the game Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to support Force Ghost Conversations on Patreon. If you are a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost conversations. All right, everybody, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. And this has been one that's been a long time coming, as I have been playing this game since it came out, literally on day one, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And finally, this past week, I have finished it. So now, as a result, we are at a place where I can talk about it. All the good, all the bad, all the frustration and the anger. This will be a safe place to have a discussion about that, but also to talk about the themes of the game, what I thought about it, and all of that stuff. And well, of course, we'll get to that on the other side of this short segment here, because we do have some news in the Cloud City Gossip segment for everybody to hear about, because there's frankly a lot of great stuff that happened this past week in the Star Wars Lucasfilm galaxy. And to start, Empire Magazine confirmed, or announced, I should rather say, that The Phantom Menace, yes, Star Wars Episode 1, is coming back to cinemas. 2024 does mark the 25th anniversary of the film, which came out in 1999 in May of that year. And on May 3rd, so perfect activity for your May 4th endeavors, is going to see Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, back on the big screen. So more details will come out, I imagine, in the next couple of months about where you can see it, what theaters are participating, how you're going to, all your questions will probably be answered, but hopefully it's coming to a cinema near you, and you can maybe for the first time see this movie as it was intended in the theaters. I know I'm certainly looking forward to that, because it's been I don't really remember too much about seeing the movie in the cinema, aside from a few glimpses here and there. So it'd be really awesome for myself personally, as the start of my Star Wars journey, to refresh myself and reacquaint myself with that theatrical experience for The Phantom Menace. This is similar to what they did last year for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, and they also kind of did a re-release in 2020 for The Empire Strikes Back, but that was also kind of a pandemic thing, so I'm not really sure if that totally counts in the same way as Return of the Jedi did on a massive scale last year. Hopefully this is a trend for the prequels as well, that as they arrive at their 25th anniversaries over the next couple of years, or maybe even perhaps the 50th anniversary of A New Hope, Force Awakens, as these milestone years start creeping up for these different films, they maybe get a re-release so that people can get re-excited and reinvigorated about those films as they arrive them. Also, we got confirmation from Diego Luna himself that Andor Season 2 has wrapped filming, which is also very exciting if you ask me, because that can only mean we are one day and one step closer to finally seeing Andor Season 2. I have to imagine that at the time of this, so we're in February of 2024, this announcement, probably because of CG and all that stuff, you're at the absolute earliest looking at a fall 2024 or 2025 more realistically release of Andor. And frankly, it would also depend on the Disney Plus release schedule, because I know that they have announced that they're going to kind of push back on, or pull back, I should rather say, about the content and the amount of content that they're releasing on Disney Plus, in order to make sure that people have time to watch it and just get more excited about things, and they're able to market it better, all that kind of stuff. They don't want to throw too much at the audience at one time on the platform. So it really will depend on what else is coming in the pipeline as well. But again, very excited for Andor Season 2. Season 1 is absolutely the bee's knees phenomenal. So you're going to want to make sure you're caught up on that and to finally see how this connects from Season 1 to the opening scenes of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Finally, this week, we got confirmation from Bob Iger himself that The Mandalorian and Grogu will release in 2026. The new film that was announced a few weeks ago that will be helmed by Jon Favreau and will showcase the hero, the Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, and Din Grogu, his trusted Padawan, kind of his apprentice of the Mandalorian ways. They will be gracing the theatrical screens coming very soon here. So it's also wonderful to know that we're getting that coming up in the future. This is all just exciting stuff for the Star Wars fandom, frankly, over the next couple of years here, with a very close re release of The Phantom Menace and then looking like Andor probably in 2025. And then also the return to theatrical Star Wars releases for new stuff, I should say, with The Mandalorian and Grogu. But we also are going to have that Rey New Jedi Order Star Wars film probably in 2026, or maybe 2026, maybe 2027 as well. The Acolyte is around the corner. Bad Batch Season 2, Skeleton Crew, Ahsoka Season 2. There's certainly many, many more great Star Wars stories to come. Tales of the Jedi Season 2. All this wonderful stuff is definitely in the pipeline, so there's a lot to be excited and grateful for when it comes to future Star Wars content. So with that, folks, that's all that I had for the news. This week we'll be back on the other side of this short break with a deep dive look into Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Okay, everybody, welcome back. It is time for our main discussion of this week's episode, and it is about the game Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Yes, the highly anticipated sequel to 2019's great game, in my opinion, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Which takes the main protagonist, Cal Kestis, a Padawan at the time of Order 66, and joins a few years after that conflict to showcase how he is taking up the mantle of being a Jedi and hiding after the events of Order 66. And he joins his newfound droid buddy, BD1, and a group of people aboard the Mantis, Sarah Junda and Grease. Meets Marin along the way, a Night Sister, one of the last Night Sisters that we're aware of at this point in canon, but we also know that there are a few out there on Peridia, the Great Mother, and all those other folks. And it shows their antics as they go across the galaxy looking for keys to the Zepho and the perhaps some more Force mysteries out there that Master Eno Cordova was trying to discover. And in the course of this game, Jedi Survivor, it takes place several years after the events of Jedi Fallen Order. I believe, now don't quote me on this, it takes place timeline wise at around the same time as the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, so perhaps 10 years after the events of Order 66 and around 9 years prior to the events of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And I could be wrong on that one, but that's kind of where my headcanon is on that front there. There may be some give or take a couple years on that one. But that's kind of where I imagine that this series kind of fits in place here. And I'm pretty sure that a third one is coming. This has been kind of, I think, in the circuits confirmed by Cameron Monaghan, but this game has been excessively popular, so I would imagine that Disney and EA, or not EA, but I think Respawn is the developer behind this. I think they are certainly wanting to continue the story, and the story doesn't end by any stretch, by the way, that it concludes in the at the story's end here of this tale. Frankly, Star Wars Jedi Survivor just showcases Cal kind of in a way being a rebel leader of a cell, not really a part of a cell, but just striking back against the Empire in various ways. I kind of think as similar to how we find Kanan, Hera, Sabine, and folks at the beginning of Star Wars Rebels, how they're not really connected to a larger unit of the rebellion that doesn't really exist yet at that point, but they are engaged in this grand scale attacks against the Empire, perhaps even not grand scale, but more like guerrilla strikes against the Empire. So again, the game does start with like this attack on Coruscant, where Cal is caught up in the midst of being captured, and he escapes, and all of that great stuff. And of course, the antics then follow through as they're going to different planets, such as Kobo, which I found to be a really cool planet when you got to explore kind of, again, the dark times that Obi-Wan talks about. You're living in the heart of what the Empire's reign is. You're seeing them across the galaxy, but you're also finding these, like, the people that are milking the underground ways that you can make not necessarily a change, but make an impact, make wealth, be forceful and strong in the galaxy underneath the Empire, such as like the Bedlam Raiders, right? The mining operations that they're doing on Kobo are a great example of that. Where you see these folks, like the underworld in a way, right? Maul with Crimson Dawn and Solo around the same time is able to operate at peak efficiency too, because the Empire, although it is everywhere, it can't be everywhere at the same exact time. So there are cracks in the system, and it does allow a black market to thrive, right? That's how you get in Return of the Jedi, seeing Jabba's palace and all that stuff, the menagerie of all that, and the bounty hunters. There are always going to be multiple ways to circumvent a large, massive system. And that's frankly how a rebellion can also start, too. And it's also how our First Order can start, too, at the same regards, right? Like this, when you're a grand, large unit like that, it's so hard to keep massive control over everything and anything, as it were. So this is this is a game. Let me just start it right there. I have many thoughts and frustrations, I will say, just about the gameplay in general. I love Jedi Fallen Order. I really like that game, and I found it to be, it's about, I want to say maybe 10 hours or so of gameplay, which I found to be a nice sweet spot, or maybe it was 8. It just didn't feel overwhelming and to finish as a game. I was doing grad school at the same time too, and I had a wonderful time just kind of after class or something like that, just hopping on the game, playing for an hour, and continuing the story. This game at times, though, felt quite daunting. It's very large, it's massive. They improved the gameplay, I will say, a lot better in certain regards, including the fast travel sequences, requesting a hint. Um, all that stuff really helped to the gameplay, I think, in terms of learning lessons from the first game that I would have definitely said are uh, perhaps casualties of fun. Now, with this game, though, I definitely found myself being absolutely dumbfoundedly lost. More so than I ever thought. I was even playing on the lowest difficulty. I was just playing story mode. I had a great time defeating enemies, beating bosses, fighting off all the different villains, right? Dagon Gera, Raven, uh, Ravlin, sorry, and Vader, especially seeing Vader in the game was just absolutely a delight. Whatever they did for the, I assume they did AI on the voice generation for Vader, but it was spot on entirely. A lot of fun doing that. The fighting was great. I thought they did a wonderful job doing all the fighting, like choosing different lightsaber techniques, whether it be a dual wield or a double bladed saber. A cross guard was really fun towards the end of the game, or if you want to do a lightsaber plus a blaster, they gave you a lot of opportunities to do that. Plus different force techniques too, whether it be telekinesis, confusion. It just wasn't this kind of the same standard gameplay that it was before. And they certainly expanded the opportunities for that, plus a ton of different character optimization strategies. So if you wanted Cal to have a mullet or a goatee, anything like that was on the table. You could just customize to your wit's end. So I think that makes for a fun gameplay experience. And if you want to play the game over and over again, there's multiple ways to, you don't have to do it the exact same way. You can utilize different fighting structures and strategies in order to complete the end tasks as a result. And there's a ton of side quests too. You can keep just going with the game and learning more and more and fast traveling and doing all the bounty hunting side quests and all that stuff. With all that said, though, again, let me get back to my frustrating point here is I just found myself lost many times where I knew I was in the right area, but there was no indication as to where something would be. So I would find myself more so than not, especially towards the end here, like I would say maybe from hour 6 of gameplay all the way through hour 15 was I found myself watching YouTube walkthroughs constantly of the gameplay just because like I didn't know where this rock was located that I was supposed to find that's located up in the upper corner of the screen that I'm supposed to utilize by jumping across 5 different avenues and to locate that I would be able to grab with the force and then put it into this box area that I'm able to. It just was so complicated and convoluted in my opinion to find some of these stuff, and it just wasn't the most user-friendly gameplay experience for a person that's just trying to get through the story. Now, if it's your bag, then that's totally fine too. If you love every aspect and the puzzles of the game, by all means, this is your game. You're entitled to loving it. I'm not gonna, stand in your way and boo-hoo any of that. So let me just make that very clear. This is just my feelings and opinion on that. And if you love the game, then absolutely that's it's your prerogative, and I'm not taking any of that away from you. That's wonderful. I hope you replay the game 1,000 times again. With that, to my point though, again, this is my feelings and opinion on just playing the game in general. That did get tiring. That I just constantly had to keep looking up the story, not the story, but like the actual how to complete the story all the time. I think I maybe did that twice in Survivor, or not Survivor, but Fallen Order. Survivor, I was doing it almost every probably 10 to 15 minutes, and within that was me trying to figure it out myself and then just getting super frustrated and angry and then having to look it up and being like, really, that was it over there? I that was not apparent whatsoever just by looking at the screen. And I'd show Mrs. Forsco's conversations exactly what I was talking about. And then sometimes the gameplay just there are bugs here and there. Like if you just didn't time a jump correctly, it wouldn't work. And if you accidentally hit another button, it again just there was no, in my opinion, a lot of user friendly ways to keep the game super active and moving. So I felt like I wasn't just stagnating all the time in terms of how I was getting from point A to point B and trying to continue the story. So that was just a frustrating aspect of the game in general. And all that, and it did get daunting just to be like, I wish I could just get from point A to point B and continue the story here and there without having to jump and cross and do 15 different ladder jumps and having to fight against wind and falling down a tree and trying to figure out where I need to go and bouncing across all these new different like jump points in the game. If you play the game, you know what I'm talking about, where you could literally throw these like bouncing balloons into the sky that you could jump across and all that. That did get daunting. I will say that. Like, it did kind of feel like a chore to almost finish the game in some ways because of that. Like, it just did lose some of its luster and fun. That, again, that is totally my opinion. That's how I felt about it. Let's just say, like, once I finished the game, I deleted it off my my Xbox's hard drive, and I was like, I probably won't play this game ever again. And again, if it was your jam, then by all means, I'm not taking any of that away from you. I hope you continue to enjoy it and have fun with it. That being said, let's not continue to dwell on the negative anymore here. I don't want to keep doing that. That's not the point of this podcast. We're here to kind of just talk to the deeper themes of this all. And this game really ends. It ends basically with Cal and Marin finding this new outside of the galaxy planet that was kind of discovered in the High Republic era, which is kind of the main hunt and discovery of this movie, not this movie, but this game, is to find Tanalorr, which again is this planet that exists outside of the Empire's reach that could be a place for the path, the hidden path, which we are introduced to in Obi-Wan Kenobi, this path of where Force-sensitive folks can be ushered into various safe havens across the galaxy to escape from the watchful hands of the Empire. And that is what potentially Tanalorr could be. you go to across Kobo and Jeddah, and you find that there are sects of the path out there, and through that but the Empire comes to Jeddah, and it's a big point of the game. I mean, Ser Junda dies fighting off Vader to allow others to escape, but also like the big archive and library that they were putting together, and the lists of contacts on the hidden path were I can't remember if they were destroyed or taken by Marin. Marin didn't destroy it, of course, but if they were destroyed or Marin got him, I know that was a talking point between her and Sarah as they were departing, and Sarah stayed behind. Um, like there are definitely some stakes to this game, and the whole point of Tanalorr being a safe haven was really powerful. There's a big twist in the game, which is Bode being not an Inquisitor, but a fallen Jedi that was a part of like an intelligence group for the Council during the Clone Wars. He was able to basically become hidden. He took up a family during the time too. Like he blended in so well, kind of similar to what Quinlan Voss had to go through in Dark Disciple, where he had to forego some of the Jedi principles in order to win the war, which shows in many ways how far the Jedi had gone from just being peacekeepers to actually being people ushering in and leading an actual war itself. Fantastic beats of thought and continuing the failures, and just talking through how the Jedi Order was not necessarily the best at the time at the end there. Cal has to kind of struggle with that too throughout the course of this game, as he sees kind of the remnants of what are left of the Jedi Order, and he even says like the Order is gone. Maybe it's time to start anew. He doesn't say it in that regards, but he's like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. The Order is gone, but I persevere, and I kind of am a Jedi, but I'm not necessarily following. I don't need to follow the exact dogma of what the Order put forth. I can be a good person and do kind of things my own way. I'm a Ronin out there in society. So that's why he kisses Marin, and they seem to have this great love connection that was certainly blossoming in the first video game itself. I would love to read the book by Sam Maggs, Battle Scars, which is set in between the events of Fallen Order and Survivor, so that I can get a sense of how their relationship kind of blossomed in many ways in between that time frame there, to see if there were more seeds planted in a way that we maybe I could get more insights into that relationship as to how it develops and where it leads to in the course of the game. And like I said, Bode himself has a family, has a daughter, and he's trying to protect her from the Empire. He's actually working for the ISB, as we find out in the game. He's not an Inquisitor. The ISB are trying to circumvent the Inquisitorius in this game, which I found to be really funny. It makes sense, too, after watching Andor, right? There's always going to be like the ISB is trying to. That's just the nature of the Empire. It's just one-upping each other to create status and to showcase your worth and value and to move up. And everyone's always going for the next thing up and up and up. And for them, they were like, if we can implant a fallen Jedi that we have a leverage against, because they held his daughter and held him, frankly, on this ISB planet in a way, in this security depot. If he can infiltrate and find out more about the hidden path, and just using Cal against basically them falling off the beaten path there, finding the path, destroying the path, utilizing that's a great way for getting into the good graces of Lord Vader and Emperor Palpatine. So all that's on the table there, and that's why they're doing that. And Bode sees Tanalorr as an escape for him, and he's just, unfortunately, he is selfish and says, this is only it for Kata and I are the only two that can be here. It's the only way we can be safe, and it is certainly a choice made out of fear. And because of that, Cal is like, you're being selfish. This can be a place for everybody. It doesn't have to just be that way. And they're worried that eventually the Empire does find everybody, and then Tanalorr will no longer be a safe place, and they'll have to keep running and all that. And Bo does give into the dark side and starts attacking Cal and Marin. And unfortunately, Cal, he doesn't relent, given the choices many times to relent. And then Cal has to end him. So, and he does, and then Kata becomes a part of the family of Marin and Cal, and they're going off into the galaxy to find more people and to shepherd them to Tanalorr, idealistically to save them. Um, which is it's really great. That's really great. I love how the story ended. I like the character development and all that. So all the mid aside, putting aside all the gameplay issues that I had of it along the way, the story itself is sound, and it's a good story, and it's a fun story, and it really does showcase the evolving questions that Jedi have to face and the challenges that are facing to people of that ilk and of that path as they engage in this survivor time frame. Right, Cal's a survivor, Marin's a survivor, Sarah Junda's a survivor, Bode is a survivor, and they were all put with questions ahead of them as to what to do, and how they react is how they get to the story here that is put forth, which is really great. It's a really great story. I will note too that unfortunately, because, and this is my last gripe about this about the game, is I was spoiled to the Bode to betrayal, because when you're on YouTube and you have to scroll and search to find the exact spot where you're at in the game, in order to find what the next step is, to see someone do it on the walkthrough so you can figure out, so you're not spending hours and hours and hours in the same spot walking around. And scrolling forward, I did find that I was caught. I got spoiled to that, because I scrolled to a part that was way too far ahead from where I thought I was supposed to be, and then I was spoiled to that. I was like, oh, you're fighting Bode as a big boss? Well, he must turn on you then. So that was a little bit disappointing, that because of the frustrating nature of the gameplay itself, that I was spoiled to perhaps the biggest aspect and change of the game itself, because I thought the Bode and Cal relationship was really well done, and that if you were probably unbeknownst to what was going to happen in the game, then you would certainly have no idea that traitor betrayal was coming, and it probably had a bit more of substance and meaning to you as the game progressed. So especially after, God, that was probably 13 or 14 hours of gameplay at that point. I will say the game is almost twice as long, in my opinion, as probably Fallen Order felt. It felt. I might be wrong entirely on the walkthrough of how long it actually does take to play the main story out. It did feel twice as long to me, and maybe that's because of just it took me many months to play it. Grad school and moving got in the way, all that stuff. But for it did feel like it was twice as long, like 15 hours or something like that, in order to complete, versus like the 8 or so for Fallen Order. So maybe the game is just a little too long, in my opinion. Maybe for you it was the right amount of length of time. That's totally fine as well. But that's kind of where I'll leave it here. I think that this franchise is ripe for a trilogy. I need to see where these characters go, to see if there is how it lines up with the events of Rebels, Clone War, not a Clone Wars, but Andor, Rogue One. I need to see it to a conclusion here. I need to see where the story finishes with a trilogy here, and perhaps another book in between. I think that these characters, certainly there's a lot more to tell where these stories go. I would love to see perhaps the Grand Inquisitor come into play here, if it works out timeline wise, and perhaps him to be the big bad of a third game. That's purely my speculation. That'd be fun to see that play out there, and maybe if they could get Jason Isaacs or Rupert Friend to maybe reprise the voice or something like that. That would be very cool, and I'd be very intrigued to see if they utilize the Rebels animation more, or the actual live action version of that character. But that's purely speculatory. They may include just a whole nother new character. I mean, they had High Republic aspects in this game, because that's how the whole Tanalorr thing plays into this endeavor. Dagan Gera is literally he's a survivor from the High Republic era, and when he comes out of his kind of hibernation when he comes out of that hibernation, he basically is like, where's the order and all that, and he has to be told that this new empire is taking over. Like, that's so wild and bonkers to think that you'd be kind of out of action for 200 years. And just imagine if you were in the 1800s, right, and then woke up in today's day and age, how vastly different the society would be, and to know that everything that you had thought of prior had been basically it's meaningless now, and you're in a whole new society and world. It's fascinating to even consider the possibilities of what that could be. So all in all, I enjoyed the story of this game. The gameplay itself was frustrating for me, but I'm excited to see where these characters go and where the story will commence as it proceeds into a third chapter here. I'd love to see how it concludes, and that's basically it for my thoughts on this game here. Thank you all for listening to my rants and ramblings and frustrations. This is very cathartic in many ways to chat about this game after I had been looking at my wall here of upcoming episodes to do for months, and I was like, I need to get back into playing that. So then I pushed myself to do it, and finally, it is now crossed off the checklist here. So with that, folks, that is all that I had for this week's episode of Forest Ghost Conversations. If you want to continue the conversation, tell me how you felt about playing this game. Chat us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Hive. Just search for Forest Ghost Conversations, and we'll be there in some capacity. You can also support the show via TeePublic. So we have merchandise. We have t-shirts, hoodies, iPhone cases, pillows, blankets, all that stuff with our logo on it, and various other types of logos that we got. So just go to the episode description and look for our merchandise link. You'll be able to find access to all those different items on our site. We also have a Patreon site, whereas for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to a ton of Forest Ghost Conversations related goodies. At $3 a month, you can get an extra episode of Forest Ghost Conversations. So I find that to be very cool. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and see what tier that you would be interested in supporting. So with that, folks, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode about something in the Star Wars galaxy. And may the Force be with you. Take care.